Well, this has been a video that I've been wanting to make for a really long time. I'm going to call it Smudging 101. So I think smudging is one of the most incredible ceremonies. It's pretty universal through a lot of different teachings. It's a perfect time to do it now because we are entering into spring and things are starting to warm up, and we start thinking about cleaning out our homes and organizing. And what better time to smudge your house than while you're cleaning physically? You can also clean energetically. So I wanted to make this video in two parts. The first one, we will talk about the 4 sacred medicines as I have been taught them. And then in video 2, I'll actually show you how I smudge my house and how to kind of set up a method for which you can smudge, even if your house is complicated or you have a lot of, strange staircases or parts of the house that are harder to get to if you just follow the walls, the outside walls. So this one will be a bit longer because we'll be talking about the 4 sacred medicines. They are 4 herbs that we'll be discussing. And just by way of a little bit of a warning, the way that I smudge is very traditional. I have had very strict and traditional teachers when it comes to this. I have sat with these 4 medicines quite a bit, and so I feel that they also have a spirit that teaches and that forms a relationship with you. And so if you're watching this video and you're kind of used to your smudging routine, you may find some of the things that I say a little surprising, and they may alter your relationship with the ceremony that you currently use to smudge. And if that happens, I would just invite you to sit with the medicine, with the plant, with the spirit, and see how you might need to adjust your ceremony or your intentions to align more with the traditional methods. That's not to say that I believe that Spirit can't provide you with a specific ceremony that is unique to you and your needs. But I think that when it comes, especially to beginners with smudging, there's a lot of misinformation, and that kind of gets us into habits that are not following or being respectful of the traditional path. So let's get started. We're talking a little bit about the smudging tradition and some of the things that you might need. The first thing to understand that's very important is that your smudging ceremony was appropriated. It was originally a tradition of the indigenous cultures. So that's one of the reasons why I think that it's so important to respect and honor the tradition that you're taught and the medicines that you use, because they were given to those cultures first, and then those cultures have allowed us to share in that tradition with them. Traditionally, smudge sticks weren't a thing. So you smudged in a pot, like this one, or in an abalone shell, which was pretty common, over a coal like this. So these are little charcoal briquettes that can be used in, you can buy them for hookahs, or just your barbecue grill even. You can use those coals. Originally, of course, they were coals that came from a fire, just the hot leftover pieces that were smoldering that you would put into your pot and then smudge over. Smudge sticks came along a little later. I remember sitting with one of my friends who was talking about the first time that he saw a smudge stick, and he thought, well, that's pretty interesting, it's pretty convenient, but he still prefers to smudge in a pot. And I do actually as well. It's very interesting to me that as I place loose leaf onto a coal and smudge with a pot, that even the smell is different. And I don't know, there's just something really cool about, and I guess it probably comes back down to that tradition and this idea that this is how it's been done and how the ceremony was originally set up. It makes it so special. So you really want to put a little extra oomph in your smudging, I would do it over a charcoal in a smudge pot as opposed to using a stick. Although the sticks are very convenient, and I've never had a mentor or teacher tell me that I shouldn't use a stick. So the second kind of thing that you need to know that's very traditional about smudging is the importance of the feather that you use. So originally the teaching is that you need to use a feather from a bird of prey. Now a lot of birds of prey are illegal for us to own, right? I can't own an eagle feather or a hawk feather. But luckily, according to the tradition, turkeys are birds of prey. And turkey is one of the feathers that we can own. So it is best to smudge with a non-artificial turkey feather to kind of respect that tradition. Okay, so now let's go into the 4 sacred medicines. The first one I'm going to talk about is probably the most popular and the one that I think is most misunderstood. So this is where we might have some disagreements. It's okay, all right? But I want to talk to you about sage. So normally sage will come in a bundle like this. It's very easy to light. It burns for a long time, has a very strong, wonderful smell. And if you read about sage, you'll read that it cleans and clears. And I agree with that. I think that we might need to dig a little bit deeper into what that actually means, though. So, some of the more new age websites will tack on that it cleans and clears negative energy. I also agree with that, but I still don't think it tells the whole story about sage. Sage to me is like a reset. If I were to smudge water with sage, for example, I would expect that it would reset to a pH of 7, neutral. And of course, that's a water example. That's not true. I mean, I'm not going to go reset pH with sage. But in terms of energetic properties in your home, sage resets to that neutral energy level. It's really, really good at moving energy and cleaning and clearing energy. But I think you need to use caution when you are specifically saging out an entity in your home, especially one that you think is more negative or demonic, right? I see on Reddit, I'm a big fan of Reddit, and on those paranormal forums, they talk about sage all the time. And if you get somebody on there that says they have something in their house and what do? I feel like I'm being haunted. The very first post is smudge with sage. And then the post after that's usually the opening poster again saying, hey, cool, my house now feels really good. I feel reset. I feel refreshed. I feel clean. And things are great. And then 3 days later, they'll post again saying something like, man, I think I made whatever it was mad because now it's back in my home and it's worse than it was. And when that happens, I think it's because of a misunderstanding or misuse of sage. So, good uses of sage: cleaning a ceremonial space before or after your ceremony. But you should always let the smoke settle before you try to do any spirit work, because otherwise you have the potential of clearing out that spirit that you're trying to invite into your home or into that space. So imagine in our example of this demon or entity that we're trying to get rid of, that we clear him out through sage, and that works great. But then we leave the house empty and neutral. And there's nothing in there, once the smoke settles, to stop that entity from coming right back in. And of course, I think these people, when they post our right, I think it's a little upset that it was pushed out and that its claim was perhaps challenged, right? But the problem is that saging is only part of it. So you clear that energy out, and then you need to make sure you don't leave an empty container for whatever to come back in, right? So, cleaning and clearing, great. public places. If you are trying to clear energy out of a place that shouldn't ever have some sort of spiritual entity in it, like a business or a public park where energy is always flowing, sage would be a really good place for that, to give it a good reset. And then, of course, yes, in your home with caution. Just remember that you want to not leave an empty home when you're done. Okay? So, I don't understand how a medium, somebody who communicates with spirit, could burn sage during a session unless that spirit was standing outside of the affected area and like throwing information to them, which I'm sure they could do, right? I know maybe that's how some mediums work, and that's great. That's not how I work. I really like to have the spirits present when I work with them as close as possible. And so I never burn sage during ceremony, only before to set up the space and clear it out for those energies to come, and then after as a way to dismiss or to clean the space for the whatever's happening next. Okay? So what would you use in the home if if sage, I just gave it away, if maybe after saging? And the answer to that is the second sacred medicine, which is cedar. Okay. So what is cedar? There's a really neat myth. I'll give you the short version of it. That there was a tribal chief who was very righteous in his life. He loved to serve his people. And so when he passed on, the Great Spirit asked him what reward he wanted. And, you would think that somebody like that would be like, oh, I want great riches in the afterlife. I want to finally rest or to relax. But no, this chief wanted to come back to help humanity and to continue supporting his tribe. And so the Great Spirit brought him back as a cedar tree. And any time that we smudge with cedar, we invoke that spirit and the blessing of the Great Spirit in that chief. And instead of just cleaning and clearing like sage does, I find cedar to be very healing and very inviting. So it invites in your ancestors and your angels or your guardians, right? It is burned during ceremony to help invite in these high vibrational energies and to kind of set that energetic level at a higher bar. So it is what I smudge my house with, because I am not afraid of entities being in my home as long as it's the right ones, right? But if there is somebody who has problems discerning whether something in their house is good or bad, then cedar might not be the best thing. You might want to stick to sage and do it either more often or find another way to raise the vibration of your home after you sage. So cedar will bring in these entities, and then those entities seem like they get to work. So if I have a negative entity in my house that I want out, then I will use cedar, because then it brings in like this army of really awesome angels and ancestors who can then escort that being out and then fill the home with their presence and make it busy almost at this higher vibration, so that that entity doesn't have the ability to come back into the home. So I really love cedar. It's one of my personal medicines, I feel. So you want to use it if you sage beforehand after the sage smoke has settled. Okay. You want to use it during your ceremonies to invite spirits of this higher vibration. And then again, you want to use it if you're not afraid of, or that you understand that the entities that come into your home while using cedar are these higher vibrational energies that are there for your good and your protection. So that is cedar. Now let's move on to the third sacred medicine, which is sweetgrass. And sweetgrass comes in a braid, just like this. And each section of the braid has 7 strands of grass. And each strand represents something different. There's a strand for the past, or the ancestors, a strand for the future, or the children, and of course a strand for the present. And I really like sweetgrass. The very first time I ever smelled it was in a sweat lodge, where it was used, and it just seemed familiar to me. It was almost nostalgic when I first smelled it. And it has a vanilla scent to it, so it's very, very pleasant. Now, you don't want to smudge your whole house with sweetgrass. You want to use it for ceremonies. And it varies from cedar in that it calls in spirits or entities, but it doesn't matter to the sweetgrass what vibrational state they're in. So you want to use sweetgrass with a really centered intention in a safe space. If you're a medium and you need to work with somebody who hasn't passed on or who has, maybe some anger issues, then you can use sweetgrass to kind of lure them in because it is appealing to all of the spirits. But of course, if you're doing shadow work or needing to work with any lower vibrational energy, depending on your spiritual path, sweetgrass is aligned with that. And so if you are looking to cleanse or purify your home, this really strong invitation of sweetgrass isn't necessarily your best choice, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So your intention is very, very important in sweetgrass when you use it. And you just want to use it in your ceremonial space during ceremony to enhance spirit communication or that presence, I guess. So, okay. The final sacred medicine is considered probably the most sacred, and it is tobacco. So I have some loose leaf here, looks like this, and I burn it over a coal or in a pipe. Now, tobacco is really special because it's considered one of its major uses is that it has the ability to carry messages from one side to the other, to the living, to the dead. Right? It's very interesting to me how many experiences people have with deceased ancestors when they know they're visiting and they have that scent of tobacco smoke. So that is something that is pretty common. You hear it a lot. And it is because tobacco has that ability to cross between the world. I think that's one of the reasons why it may be a little dangerous, right? Because it is something that, has that power to unite those two forces of the spiritual and the physical. It is used as an offering to spirit. And it actually has almost a contractual presence or energy. A lot of my teachers and mentors will honor the spiritual contract with tobacco in that if somebody can't pay for a reading, for example, they will accept offerings of tobacco to then turn around and use to petition the spirits, because it's believed that if you offer a tobacco offering, that your question must then be answered. It's that contract. And so it's something that I personally respect as well. If somebody brings me tobacco as an offering, then it doesn't really matter what I'm doing. That person then gets the right to have their question answered. So, if somebody can't pay for a reading or can't make any other sort of energetic offering to spirit, tobacco is a really great way to show this kind of connection and this respect, this offering. So it's a really neat and powerful medicine. It's not something that, again, that you would smudge your whole house with, although you will notice that it's a really good use or it's something really good to use when you are praying or meditating, when you're petitioning Spirit for something. Like I said, you can use it as an offering. You can use it to draw protective containers, like circles around your house or in a room. You can blow it to move energy. I've seen that done quite a bit. And then healers can use it to help heal in many, many different ways. But that should be left to somebody who has that experience and that tradition and that teaching. But you will find the ayahuasqueros in the jungles of Peru, for example. Other shamans will use tobacco to help vision and to heal. And that's because of its powerful contract between our world and the spiritual world. So those are the 4 sacred medicines and when you should use them. I hope that you have found that helpful. I do want to leave with just kind of one more thing that's very, very important. And that is that there seems to be a propensity to start mixing these medicines together, especially in smudge sticks. I see sage and sweetgrass smudge sticks all of the time. And now that you know a little bit more about these 2 properties, I hope you can see that that's really a mixed intention, right? The sage is going to ask something to leave, to clear, right? While the sweetgrass is saying, hey, whatever you are, come on in. And so that muddles your intention. You'll notice that on my website, I don't sell any smudge sticks that have mixtures in them, because I believe that these 4 medicines need to be used in their correct traditional ways and with the right intention. So try to use these 4 medicines as intended in their pure form, and don't purchase things that are blended or mixed. Okay. I hope that you found that helpful. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment or reach out to me. And in the next video, I will actually smudge my house and walk you through that and show you how that is done. All right. Blessings to you all.